Minister of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, Sindisiwe Chikunga, has charted her desired course for her portfolio, putting more money into a youth development fund and initiating the South African National Service Institute, or SANSI. A revamp is also on the cards for the National Youth Development Agency, this is the NYDA, to improve its operational efficiency as well as its governance, and it's received a 704.3 million rand allocation. Steve Letsike is the Deputy Minister and joins me now to talk about some of the plans being hatched to dramatically alter the fate and fortunes of people represented by the department. Good morning to you and welcome. Thank you very much for your time. Youth, of course, a key focus in the Minister's budget vote speech. There is hype now about accelerating youth employment through skills training, helping people grow businesses and leadership skills. Tell us more about SANSI and, more importantly, how young people access it.
Indeed. Thank you so much for the invitation and good morning to your viewers. Really, our minister really tabled the 2023-2024 budget vote speech last week, Friday, where we expressed the commitment to Parliament to move beyond the idea of just advocacy and rally, of all government and all society behind a nation, around dealing with the unemployment that affects youth, in particular women, vulnerable groups, but also to respond to some of the threats that the country is experiencing, poverty as well as inequality. And, part of why, the budget really focuses on youth employment and proposing initiatives as the national service, initiatives really responds to some of the dynamics. And we're looking at prioritizing young people more so that we can respond to the crisis and respond to the implementation framework that the president has championed, but also we have a mandate as the department to champion.
Yeah, so talk to us about some of these, about some of the programs. And I was asking about SANSI specifically. Apparently it's going to be kind of spearheaded and led through the SANDF, but it's going to be also an opportunity for things like skills development and leadership development. So I just want to understand exactly how it's going to work, because we often see, Steve, the announcement of great initiatives, sometimes the access to the very demographic and the cohort it's seeking to attract isn't always there, so it doesn't translate. Talk to us more about that.
No, indeed. I think first we must appreciate that SANSI initiative was launched by, and led by His Excellency Paul Mashatile in May 2024, which really ultimately is around the National Institute that responds and implements the responsibility of SANDF-led National Youth Service. But I think part of it is really about how we reinforce, the whole approach that responds to the value chain driven sector. One, skills development is a big part of investment that goes into building a nation that is capable, that is also responsive to some of the multiple industries for that. But the second aspect of the program focuses on enterprise development. You just don't want to be building skills and don't complement it with a developmental approach. You would understand.
Steve, may I come in there? Because, and again, I know everybody's new. I know that everyone's finding their feeds, but I know that you're reading directly from the minister's speech now, because I have it in front of me as well. And what it's basically telling me is that maybe that sensitization to the program of action in the ministry isn't quite there. Have you and the minister been talking? Is there that alignment in purpose, alignment in the project priorities going forward? Because I'm not getting the sense that there is a real sort of shared understanding around what the project is, how it's actually going to work, and how you're going to begin to measure that impact.
But you would appreciate, Andre, that there is conversation between minister. We have met, with the executive to really look at the annual performance plan of the department, but also the performance plan of the National Youth Development Agency. So the alignment of it, one, you are asking about what those key high-level priorities are, and I was sharing those key high-level priorities. Now you are asking a fundamental question about what is the approach and how do young people access this? One of the most important things that NYDA has been very instrumental. We have 44 offices across the country that are led through the NYDA that actually have opened up skill centers, but also access to young people reaching these or applying for these opportunities. Applying for the opportunities of training, applying for the opportunities also of funding opportunities, but also applying for opportunities for skills linkages. The brigade, if you take what is happening with the program that is led by the National Defence Force in building that youth service oriented approach, you have to look at it as a kind of skills building, but also an approach that looks at livelihood in the future. When you don't have young people that really is empowered, but is enabled as well, you miss that opportunity. So I think we must appreciate, and the large part of that funding for the department, which is over 70% of the department, has gone into youth development. And
Steve, how many unemployed young people do we have?
What we also have complemented is not also taking young people just as homogeneous group. We have also looked at what are the intersectional issues that needed to be incorporated. There's a pressure point, and industries, whether from energy, infrastructure, and others, are the ones that we are looking into.
Yeah, I think we're getting to the point, especially with this particular portfolio, Steve, where specificity and detail is critical. How many young people are unemployed in South Africa today?
We have a really big part of a challenge here. We've got over, of course, 50% of young people who are unemployed and who are graduate, by the way, as well.
What number, Steve? What's the number of young people unemployed in South Africa?
We've been presenting the statistics, and which we have given to saying 53% of young people are unemployed.
How many people are we talking about?
We are talking about at least nothing less than about 7-8 million of young people who are unemployed.
It's apparently 4.7 million, according to Stats SA in the last quarter.
No, you have different demographics, 15 to 24-year-olds, and you also have 24-year-olds. So unless if at all you're asking for the specific number of age category, if you're talking about 15 to 24-year-olds, then you're giving that number. But I have completed both 15, 24-year-old to 24 to 35-year-olds. And that is the statistics that also was presented by Statistician General.
So according to the latest unemployment data from Stats SA, youth unemployment is at 45.5%, and it's in that 15 to 24 category. It's comparable to the national average of 32.9%. This was in the fourth quarter of 2023. So the total number of unemployed youths increasing by 87,000, Steve, to 4.7 million people. What was so concerning in the last quarter about those numbers is that the number of working young people went down by 97,000 to 5.9 million. And I think the reason we're laboring on the numbers is, as I said, we're faced with the national crisis of young people who don't have credible programs to go into. We know that there are criticisms around the NYDA in the past in terms of its budget expenditure. So those ministers, people like yourselves who are entrusted with the sacred duty to really be vigorous, to understand the demographic that you're dealing with well, becomes really central. You have to almost know it like your own child in a sense. And I think that's where that sincerity in asking about what the numbers are like is because young people really need to feel as if this ministry is going to move their agenda forward, whether it's through programs, spearheaded by the SANDF and driven by them, or outreach programs in the community or funding. It has to be seen to credibly shift the needle. So talk to us about particularly the NYDA, the move now in the rural areas about encouraging the inclusion of young people and their projects, particularly SMMEs in the rural communities.
Andre, I think we must
And it's Iman,
appreciate
by
that
the way,
the
Steve. Sorry,
department.
my name's Iman.
Sorry, Iman. Apologies for that. I want to just say that we must appreciate the fact that the department for the longest time have been underfunded, and this is the shift in the realignment and the negotiations and discussions within a discussion with the president, also with the treasury in terms of putting more investment to that. Indeed, the crisis that we're dealing with, NYDA has presented its priorities, and even with that, we have identified the gap that exists. The 44 offices that are across the country have spread across peri-urban, rural areas, as well as townships, communities, across. And I have alluded in terms of, an ecosystem that is taken as an approach to respond in getting their jobs to young people, but also creating opportunities for enterprises that young people can lead, and also the ownership within the different sectors accordingly. So those opportunities are what is being opened up for young people, and that's what we're going to be measuring. That's what we're going to be pushing other departments to really be responding to the issues.
Intimate partners violence. I just want to go to this particular issue before I let you go. The intimate partner violence in South Africa continues unabated. Steve, I don't know if you saw the news earlier this week, and many of us did. Academic and internationally respected scientist Dorcas Didi Lechanyane was reportedly brutally murdered by her partner this week, and we understand that her partner is apparently under police protection in hospital. In South Africa, 50% of girls aged 15 and older have experienced either physical or sexual intimate partner violence. Women and children in South Africa seem to have a target on their back in our country right now. How are you planning, in terms of your program of action, to begin to stop this and make women and children safer in our country?
The big part of our agenda is to prioritize prevention. Dr. Letlape's the incident really is one of many that we're dealing with. We have a pandemic, and President had declared gender-based violence and femicide as a pandemic for the country. And I think one thing that we have said is that we can't spend resources just on response, because women, children, LGBTI people, persons with disability continue to die, in the hands. And if you look at the statistics, even from South African Police Service, are quite high. And our approach through the National Strategic Plan, including the bills, the laws that President ascended just before the end of the sixth administration, really puts pressure in policy implementation. And the prevention agenda in the NSP suggests that. But one of the key area or indicator also is that how do you make sure that there are centers across the country, the Tutuzela centers that are across the country, that really responds to a one-stop center where a woman gets violated and can have access to services, police, health, as well as justice at one point center. And these are some of the issues that we are looking into, that we are strengthening, but the big part of our agenda is prevention more than any other thing.
Talk to us more about, again, mindset change, the prevention agenda. When does that begin? Does it begin in communities? Does it begin in schools? We're aware of those centers that are available, but that's only when something actually happens and people need to get help.
Sure. Indeed. Look, South Africa has been implementing prevention agenda for years. Many sectors, not only just government, but including civil society and private sector, have come to the table to respond to gender-based violence. When you look at the issues related to addressing toxic masculinity, when you look at the men's sector organizations that have been leading on campaigns of Takuani Rime, not in my name campaigns, we have to deal with patriarchy and misogyny at the heart of it. We have to look at skills building. We have to look at, negotiation and gender equality as part of what we impart in communities. But at the same time, how do we actually deal with prevention without also addressing some of the fundamental issues of poverty unemployment, because that also contributes to, the vulnerability that, women and children and many other vulnerable groups find themselves into. The unemployment of men generally also that contributes to crime generally, as well as violence that exists in our country. More men are also dying, more women are also dying. And that's some of the key fundamental issues around how we look at nation building, social cohesion programs, and also social behavior change communication campaigns that are implemented.
Would you say that what's been done in the past has been effective?
I think we have quite complex, societal challenges, and you cannot look at it as one part. I think there has been effective programs that have been implemented. There was times where, we've seen a complete reduction of violence in our communities. And maybe it also becomes circumstantial in terms of what are some of the issues we are experiencing. But you cannot deal and not respond to issues of substance use and abuse, unemployment. So what has been done in the past has been done at the minimal. So we need to upscale the effort to respond to prevention effort and reach as many young people, as many to respond to these issues.
Steve Letsike, thank you for talking to us this morning. Appreciate your time. Steve Letsike is the Deputy Minister in the Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities portfolio.